Welcome everyone to this session, Introduction to Dataverse, with me, Rosie Jurovic. I'm a business intelligence developer at Maxica Consulting, and today I'm going to be talking you through an introduction to Dataverse and the Power Platform. So before we get started, I want to ask you a question, and it is, what word comes to mind when you think about Dataverse? So you can join in the poll here on slido.com, and the number's 20074484. And I'm just keen to know what your first thoughts are about Dataverse. So I'm interested in Dataverse. Maybe you don't know anything about Dataverse, and the word might be boring or unknown, or maybe you know a little and you're looking to learn some more. So let's see, what are your first thoughts on Dataverse? Buzzword, okay, that's an interesting one. Slow, okay. Okay, that's good to see that we're going to learn something new today. Power apps, yes, we're going to cover that as well. Some kind of data world. Okay, very interesting. So I can see that somebody said that it's complex. Hopefully we can see if that's the case today in today's session. Lots of thoughts. Okay, so I'm going to ask the same question again at the end to see if maybe if you learn something new about Dataverse, maybe your thoughts are going to change on it. So let's see. Well, low-code, no-code has the potential to massively increase productivity across all areas of business. And today I want to show you where Power Platform and Dataverse fits into this opportunity. And it's so easy to get started. In fact, in today's session, we're going to set up our environments, build a database, import our existing data into the database, connect a Canvas app to Dataverse, connect to Power BI, and deploy to test, all within, we'll leave a few minutes for questions, so let's say 40 minutes. And we're going to base today's session on a scenario, and the scenario is this. I've set up a sports events company that run triathlons, and the sales team have been recording all of their data in Excel. But with the company starting to grow, and they're finding it increasingly difficult to manage their data. So the aim of today's demo is to centralize the sales data and set them up with Power Platform and Dataverse, and help them understand which areas are performing best in terms of sales. So let's dive straight into the demo. Now we're starting the demo in Power Platform Admin Center. And this is the home of where you're going to manage things like your environments and your users, build your security model, review things like your capacity, apply licenses, see how your Dataverse and your apps are performing. And for today's session, we're going to use two environments, a test and dev environment. Now we can see that I've already created my dev environment here, TryLife Dev. And let's go and create our test environment to deploy to a little bit later on. So we're just going to call it TryLife Test. And we're going to select a region nearby our users. And we can choose the type of environment here. And we're going to use a sandbox environment today for developing our solution. You can also use a trial environment if perhaps you're trying out some new features. Maybe you want to try something that's in preview. You can then deploy to a production environment. And if you're brand new to Power Platform, I would recommend that you make use of a developer environment. You can get 3 developer environments. These are completely free from Power Platform, and they're a great way to learn about Power Platform and see what you can do. Now, for today's session, we're going to use a sandbox environment, and we do want to create a database. So let's click Next. We can select our language and put our unique domain name if we have one. And we can select the currency and deploy sample apps if we want to try out the system. We can also restrict the security in here, but we're going to come back later and build our security model in a slightly different way. So let's select Save. Now we can see that that environment is now preparing. And before we go over now into make.powerapps.com, I just want to briefly touch on licensing. Now, as with all areas of Microsoft, licensing is a little bit confusing, but there are essentially three main licenses. You've got your per app plan, which gives users access to one app or portal. You've got the per user plan, which gives users unlimited apps, and there's a pay-as-you-go option as well. Licenses are applied to environments to scale up your capacity rather than applying licenses to users, so just something to bear in mind there. Now let's go over now into make.powerapps.com. Now this is the home of where you're going to build your solutions, build your apps and flows, and manage your database as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a solution for our product. And in our solution, we're going to package up all of the components that we can then deploy into test. So let's call that Try Life and select the default publisher. And we're going to come back later and put our components in there when we're ready to deploy. Now going over into Dataverse now, we can see we've got our tables here. And many of these are going to be familiar to you. So the account table, address, appointment. If you've used Dynamics before, you're going to recognize this as the common data service. But we want to get our existing data into Dataverse for our sales team. And to do that, we're going to use what's called a data flow. So we're going to build a new data flow. And let's call it Sales Data Import. And we're using Excel. And we can just drag and drop our file into the uploader here. And as we click through, we're going to see a screen that's going to be familiar to many of us. Now let's select our table in there. And we have the option now to transform our data. And this, of course, is Power Query Editor. You're going to be very familiar with this, I'm sure. So before we put our data into Dataverse, we want to just have a little check through of our data types, and they all look good and ready to go. Just the unit price, I think we need to change that one to currency. And let's select that as United Kingdom. And click Next, and we can see that this is going to get ready to load now. Now we have the option, do we want to load it to a new table, or are we going to load our data into an existing table? And we are going to be loading it to a new table, and we're going to call it Try Life Sales. We can see that we have the option if we want to use the auto-generated primary key column, which we do, or we can select our own column there as well. And doing a double check of our data types here, they all look fine, so we can load that in. You can see that we have the option to set some refresh settings. If you're going to be doing a regular import, you do have the option to set a frequency-based refresh in here. But for today's demo, we're going to do a manual refresh, and we can go ahead and publish that. So now let's go and find that in our Dataverse, and I'm going to use one that I did a little earlier on because that might take a while to load. So here we can see we've got our tri-sales table loaded in. And we've got some information about our table at the top here. So we can see our schema details in here, and we can view which columns we have in our table, which relationships exist between this table and other tables within Dataverse, and if any keys have been created. And these are generally used to connect to tables outside of Dataverse. We also have this actionable area within Dataverse, and this is where you can build things right from within the database. So you can build things like forms. If you're using model-driven apps, then you can create views of your data, and you can create charts and dashboards directly from Dataverse. You can do things like build business logic, so you can write business rules and commands. Now, we are going to create a brand new column. And it's going to be called Total Try Sales. And it's going to be a calculated column. Now, this is going to open up in the legacy UI dynamics. There is PowerFX columns now available in preview. These are going to massively increase the potential of what you can do when creating calculated fields directly within Dataverse. That's in preview now. So if you're keen to check that out, then PowerFX is going to really expand the use of Dataverse. But for today's session, we can just do unit. And there we've got our calculated column ready to go. Now, before we go over and start making some apps and connecting into Power BI, let's touch on security. And before we create our security model, just want to show you a little bit about how it's going to work in this slide. Now, it's very simple to do. We have our users within Azure Active Directory, and they are part of group. And then in our Power Platform Admin Center, for each group, we have a respective business unit. We also have a respective Azure Active Directory security team. We apply our security role to that team, and this is then reflected in Dataverse. And today we're going to be building a row-level security model. Now let's take a look about how that works in practice. So coming back over to Power Platform Admin Center and going into our environment, and we can see we've got some details about our environment here. We can see what the region is and what type environment we chose. We can convert it to production as well if we're going to go down that route for our application lifecycle management. And if we want to check, we can see that a database has been created here. Coming into settings, this is where you manage your security, manage your users. You can also do things like enable features that are available in preview as well. Set your behavior settings in here. But let's start setting up our security model now. So we need to start by creating a business unit. And as you can see, we've come back into the legacy UI of Dynamics here. One thing to bear in mind when going from Power Platform Admin Center over to Dynamics, sometimes you'll see a bit of a performance lag. Dynamics is a little bit slower. Microsoft are migrating all of the UI as we speak. So we're going to create a brand new business unit, and we'll call it TryLife BU. So we can save and close that, and we're going to set the default business unit as the parent business unit. I would recommend, when you're building out your security model, that you create a second default parent business unit. That then enables you to scale your security model if you need to. But for today's demo, we can stick with the default. So let's save and close that. And then the second step, we need to go and create our team. So we can come out of here, and we're going to go into Teams. And we can see that a team has already been created for that business unit, but what we want is an Azure Active Directory security group team. So we'll just call this one TriLife Team. We're going to select the business unit that we just created. I'll set myself as the administrator. And there we go. We can see Azure Active Directory security group team in there. And I can find the team that I've created in Azure Active Directory. That's our Azure Active Directory group right there. We can select our membership type. Now, I know the sales team, they have some external users in their tenancy, so I'm going to select members and guests. And we can click next. And we're asked if we want to apply a security role to that team, which we do. We need to go in and create that security role now. So coming back into users and permissions, into Teams, into security roles. Teams already created. And we're going to copy the basic user role. So let's call this TriLife Security. And we're copying the basic user privileges here. But what we need to do is we need to go in and apply privileges to the custom table that we've created. So let's go in and edit that. And you can see that we've gone back into our legacy UI here. We don't want our users to inherit any privileges with this security role, so we'll set that to team privileges only and find our custom table in here. Try sales. And by setting this to the business unit level, this means that users can see their data and other data from users in their team. So myself and Jill, we are part of Team A. I can see Jill's data, Jill can see my data. Frederick, who's in Team C, he can see his data and other users from Team C, but I can't see his data. So we're applying business unit privileges here. So let's save and close that. And that is our security model ready to go. Now, I said this would be quick, so now we're going to connect to Power BI. And we're going to need to find our environment in here, connect to Dataverse. TriLife Dev, there we go. And we're going to need to find our tables. Now, these are prefixed, so we are going to need the schema name. So if we come back into our make.powerapps.com and look into the properties of our table, this is going to enable us to just find that table a little bit quicker. CRB35, there we have it. So if we come back into Power BI, that might have loaded. CRB35, try sales. There we have it. We can load that in. You can see we've got a couple of options here. One thing to bear in mind when connecting to Power BI, if you do use import query mode, you're going to lose access to that security model that you've just created. So you're going to need to create a separate security model within Power BI if you choose to use import mode. So let's go for direct query. And let's start pulling out some insights for our sales team now. So I think they're going to want to see who their top salesperson is, what their best performing product is. Let's have a look at that. And we can just pop that into a column chart. whilst that loads, I can maybe start on the second visual so we can have a look what the best month in sales was. So we can get the sales date. And we're going to just pop that one into a line chart. It's taken a little while to load. That might be my internet connection here, but there we go. Now we have it. Okay, so we can see that tri-suits are the most popular product and that Harry Potter's quite clearly smashing it with sales. James Bond trailing down at the bottom there. He maybe needs some extra support from his team. And then with the which month is the most popular. Now, we can see that there's a big peak just before Christmas. That makes a lot of sense to me. I'm personally always asking for kit for Christmas presents. And then we can see as well that there's a peak just before the summer season. That also makes sense to me. I'm then realizing what I've forgotten and what I need to buy. So we've managed to get some insights very quickly from our data for the sales team there. But let's go into Power Apps and create an app for our sales team to use when they're out and about so they can start inputting data directly into Dataverse. So if we go back into make.powerapps.com, and we're going to come into App, and we are going to create a Canvas app today. And it's going to be a mobile app. They're going to be using it when they're out and about. And let's call it Try Sales App. Now, we are going to be creating a form, so we can get that ready. Make that a little bigger. And we're going to need to connect to our data in here. So let's add our data. And we can see that it's ready there. So we can just select our custom table. And let's connect our form to that table. We want to make it a little bigger. And let's choose the fields that we want to put into our form. So we're going to need the product and the number of units, total sales, what the price is, and let's also put in who the salesperson was as well. So we can add all them. We can just take these two ones out. We're not going to need them. And we can go ahead and start editing our form. So for the product, we don't really want our users manually typing in what the product is each time. So we can just add a simple drop down there. And we're just going to have that as a distinct list. Oh, excuse my terrible spelling. There we go. They can select from the drop down now. Number of units that they're going to select, that they're going to buy. We can have that as just a manual input field. Let's put the total sales at the bottom. Unit price. I think we can look this up for them. They're not going to need to put that in. So we're just going to look it up. We're going to see what product they chose. And it's going to be the product that they selected in drop down. Let's just check which one it is. Product, drop down 1. And that's unit price. There we go. Before I forget, we just need to change the update property of that one. So it looks at that drop down 1, selected. value. There we go. Let's do the same for salesperson as well. They're just going to have a drop down so that they can choose themselves from the list. And then I think we're nearly ready to use our app. So same thing, it's just going to be a distinct list of the salespeople that we've got in our TriLife sales company. Salesperson, there we go. Now let's line that up a little bit. Bill Bailey's spilling over the edge. Change the update property of that one, salesperson, that drop down to, okay. And we're just going to update the selected value from that drop down. And then total sales, we know that's going to be calculated in the back end, but we want to see that as soon as it appears, don't we? So let's just change the text field there. We need to just unlock it, change the text field, and it's just going to be unit. So that is, where's our units data card? Data card value 4. Oh. Times our unit price, that is data card value 6. And we want an action in this app, don't we? So let's put a button in. Oh, take that out of there. We don't want it in our form. There we go. Pop a button into the bottom. Let's put a call to action on there. Buy now. Hopefully they're going to sell lots of very expensive bikes. Let's put an on select property on. So we're just going to submit the form when users select the button, and we also want the form to reset as well. And we just need to change this form property to new. So let's find our default mode, and that is going to be new. Now I think that's ready to try. So let's have a go. Okay, well, I am going to buy a bike. As you can see, they're very expensive, so I'm only going to buy 2. And salesperson, I think James Bond, he was needing a little bit of help, so let's give him a bit of a boost there. And we can click buy now, and that has submitted. So there we go. There's our app ready for our sales team, ready to use. So we can close that. We've tried and seen that it's working, and we'll just have a look at the data in the back end in a minute as well. But let's publish that because we are going to add it to our solution. And before we add it to our solution, let's just go and see that data in our database so we can confirm that it's all working as we expect. So here's our try sales table. And we'll see our entry at the bottom just here. As we can see, very expensive, £10,000 for 2 bikes. Thank you. Don't think that was for Christmas. So now we can add our custom table and our app to our solution and get ready to deploy to test. I think we're doing well for time. Think I'm going to make it. Fingers crossed. So coming back into our solution, we can see now how easy it is to add those components in. Just going to touch on Power BI here. At the minute, you can't add your Power BI components to your Power Platform solutions. Microsoft are making a lot of headway. It's integrating Power BI into the Power Platform family, if you like. So there's more things available now than there were sort of 6 months, a year ago. But you will, at the moment, unless you're going to use that feature in preview, need to manage your ALM for your Power BI reports separately to the rest of your Power Platform solution. But let's add our table and our app in here anyway. So let's find our Canvas app. There it is. We can add that in. And we need to add our table in as well. So let's add our existing table. and it was our try sales table, wasn't it, that we worked with? Find that. There we go, try sales table. We do want to include all objects here, and that's to make sure that we don't miss any dependencies. So let's add them in. Come back to our overview and just check that it's all looking good. Yep, we've got our 2 components in. I think we're ready to go. Wonderful. Now we can export that and it will be ready to deploy and import into test. Now I'm going to export it as an unmanaged solution. And the reason for that is because I'm planning to embed that Power BI report into our app a little bit later on. Because I'm going to be managing 2 versions of our Power BI report, as I need to manage the application lifecycle management for the Power BI separately, by leaving the solution as unmanaged, it means that I can then embed the separate URL later. If I export it as managed, I'm not going to be able to make any changes like that afterwards. So I'm going to export it as an unmanaged solution. And whilst that gets ready and becomes available for download, I'd now like to take any questions that you may have on the demo or in any part of the session so far. One question at the back? Yeah. Yeah, so a great question on backups there and what backups are available for Dataverse. And that's a great question. And you can be really confident when using Dataverse because it is backed by Azure SQL. In terms of reverting to backups and restoring previous backups, backups are continuous in Power Platform Admin Center. And I can just quickly show you how you can access them in here. So if you come into your environment, you can see that you've got this option up here, backup and restore. And you can view your backups in here, select the time of your restore that you want to go to. And they are available, I think, for 7 days in Sandbox environment. Any other questions before we import our solution into our test environment? Perfect. So we can see that that's now ready to download, so we can download it. Come into test. Come over into solutions. Import our solution. We can see how very easy this is. Find our solution that we just downloaded, open it and import it. And it really is as simple as that. So I hope I've been able to show you today just how quick and easy it is to get started with Power Platform, particularly as you mentioned in your question, for those low maturity organizations that have a lot of their data stored in Excel, that want to increase their maturity and take that first step into structured data organization and be able to make really powerful solutions such as apps and flows and connect to Dataverse and Power BI. It really is that simple to get started. Now, I did say I was going to ask you the same question again, and this time I hope lots of you are going to say that you're fascinated and amazed by it. So let's go back into our PowerPoint now. So there we have it. I want to ask you, if it will load, what word comes to mind when you think about Dataverse now? So please do join the poll again. I hope I've been able to show you that it isn't as complex as maybe you previously thought. I'm happy to see that some of you think that it's clever. I also agree. Some really great responses here. I wish actually I'd taken a picture of the one at the beginning and now this one. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? Uncontrolled developers, yes, there's definitely a session to be had on governance there as well, I think. Easy to get started, yes, you're absolutely right. It really is easy to get started. Boring, maybe we need to do another session on the potential of Power Platform. Well, I'm happy to see some really positive responses there. That is the end of today's session. Just finish up by sharing my contact details here. My name is Rosie Jurovic. Please be free to connect with me on social media. My company website is there so you can see a little bit more about what I do. Please also do provide feedback. I'm a new speaker. This is just my second event, so please do share your feedback. I'll be really keen to get your thoughts, what you enjoyed, what you think I could improve on. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of SQL Bits.